Well, looky here. Looks like it's time for the Friday anime stream. That's right. It is about 9 o'clock, a couple minutes before. And we are here. I'm in a very comfortable t shirt. Not normally wearing the t shirts on Friday nights, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Sometimes it is just one of those days. Hey, Matt. And as is commonly the thing, we start off by just talking a little bit about the week. We've had an interesting week at work. Just a lot of questions from students, a lot of stuff going on, some frayed nerves here and there. Normal work stuff. I can't complain, although I guess I am. But it does feel pretty. We were saying we're ready for the weekend. It's like it's time for this to be over and for us to not have to think about this for a while. So that is the reality of things. I'll be honest, Akko. I've looked through some of the ANA charts for the coming up season. I'm actually pulling it up right now. And there wasn't much that leapt out at me. Things that are certainly cool, but I haven't been into, like Psycho-Pass 3. I haven't watched any of the original Psycho-Passes yet, so can't really comment on that yet. Another Fate thing, obviously. I'm kind of curious about Beastars, an actual furry anime. Lots of other things that look interesting, but I'm really reserving judgment until I actually watch those first episodes, which I'll be doing tomorrow. Tomorrow is the seasonal anime watching party. If you guys have any suggestions, by the way, for live streaming services that I could live stream that on, obviously I'd get kicked off YouTube if I tried to live stream that. But any of the kind of private services, we can set up a room and all that kind of stuff. I'd be happy to pop that into the Discord so we could watch some anime together. So yeah, plenty of things that might turn out really interesting, but can't really tell from an image and a quick summary as whether I'll really dig into those. Thanks, Game Escape. I'm hoping this is going to be a really good weekend. I'm going to do some relaxing. I'm going to go out and I think do a couple of trips. Although I'm feeling a little not quite under the weather, but my allergies have been really kicking my butt. Marimashite Iruma-kun, cool. Cautious Hero, nice. The Wrestler Isekai, yeah, that caught my eye as well. I will fully admit. Kind of a funny idea. Am I on the right thing? TV fall 2019. Yeah, that'd be it. Wait. Yeah, should be it. I'm just not seeing the image for the wrestler one here for some reason. It must be here, which must be in a different order than I'm used to. Anyway. What movies do we have coming up? Nothing really, some interesting things visually, but oh yeah, Lupin the Third, the First. Curious about that one. Oh, and then the Town of Evening Country of Cherry Blossoms. That's gonna be heavy, but interesting. Yeah, I think, JJ, that basically I got the cold and then it kind of eased off. I think I'm out of the cold, but my allergies have got my throat all, caught up. So I'm just coughing every so often, just once an hour, basically, which is not bad at all, but just, that's the nature of things. Mal has told us the fall season. Yeah, that might be a better place to look. We shall see. How are you all doing? How's your week been? What's been new in your worlds? In terms of anime, wow, hello, focus. There we go. In terms of anime, I finally, well, no, I'll get to that in a second. I watched the Blam movie or Blame movie on Netflix earlier this week. That was really cool. Um, really impressive. For those unfamiliar, that's this, which I know I've mentioned before. It's an all CGI film, but definitely anime in style, and that was really impressive. They did a really good job. The writer's done a lot of anime work, and he did an excellent job of finding an individual story. This is a 6 volume, like huge work, yeah, and each volume is pretty thick. So they did a good job of choosing a little story and turning the main character Killy into just kind of a character who comes in, kind of sweeps into this community and gets involved, and did a good job of like choosing the right characters to focus on and that kind of stuff. So I was really impressed. Some good action stuff. Definitely very atmospheric. There's even, I think, a little visual callback to that weird Blam OVA from like the 90s. There was just like a bunch of experimental short films. It was like it was a special that came with one of the manga. And it's just like a couple of different little, 5-minute shorts set in the Blam universe. And there's one visual where I was like, oh, like that's exactly from that Blam thing. That's really cool. You watched Akira for the first time in 10 years. Didn't grow on me as much as it did when I was a teen. Yeah. Yeah. Akira is definitely a visual explosion that just kind of, especially if you're young, just really overwhelms you. It is an experience of apocalypse. But as as you go up and watch more stuff, you realize that Akira is still visually overwhelming, but definitely not quite the deepest thing in the world, right? Still cool, but that's cool, JJ. So in other news, I finally, after, I don't know, almost 20 years, maybe like 15 years, I finished watching Neon Genesis Evangelion, the TV series. Yes, it's happened. I finally did it. It is all complete. And I now have things to say about Evangelion, not necessarily all here, but yes. So for those who don't know, back in the day when it was first being released over here in America, I bought the first 1 or 2 discs, watched basically up through episode 6, really impressed, but then got distracted by other things. Eventually went back and watched the last 2 episodes just to understand what this whole instrumentality controversy was about, and have since now I've finally gone through it all, every minute of that TV show. Very impressive. I this is perhaps a weird thing to say, but I see what all the fuss is about, right? And I always knew that Evo was an impressive series, but nice seeing just the whole progression all the way through. And I also totally see the frustration with that shift in tone about 2/3 of the way through. Yes, I have multiple videos probably coming about Evangelion, because there are lots of different opinions and kind of ways of approaching Evangelion, of questions people ask. And I think Evangelion is one of those things where it is clearly made by people who knew what they were doing and were trying really hard, but who faced certain limitations and restrictions of what they were doing, and couldn't just quite come out with couldn't quite stick the landing, if you will. I love that landing. Don't get me wrong. I love those last 2 episodes. I'm very impressed with it as a work of animation. But it just doesn't, and really that last 2/3 really does not jive with the tone of the first 2/3. And that's kind of really frustrating. That's the funny thing, JJ. It's made me appreciate the rebuild movies more, because of the fact that they realized, oh, when it takes Shinji 2/3 of the series to finally kind of become a little less passive, he doesn't become, nuts. He doesn't become suddenly, Kamina or anything. But you can definitely see a slight shift in his character by the last few episodes. But then just when that happens, they kind of negate it by the whole trauma he incurs at that point. But then it shifts away from Shinji for a long time. And so you don't really get to appreciate that change. I think if Shinji had been around, had been in scenes, you would have been, oh, okay, I get it. Yes, I mean, obviously he's still somewhat, he's not a hard charging character, but he's a little more comfortable in his skin now. But we never see him for the last like 6 episodes, so that's the thing. And I think if they had simply made that shift earlier in the show, Shinji wouldn't feel nearly as annoying. And when you have 4 rebuild films and Shinji kind of goes through that in the first film, that's the right kind of pacing for that, I think. I should point out I have not watched the last 2 rebuild films, but just seeing that pacing there, really, really appreciated. So that was really cool. Lots of thoughts. And I mean the budget on that show is perfectly fine for the first 2/3, and then it just kind of fades away. But yeah, that was pretty cool. It kind of rambles for a while. Always interesting thing. I've thought about for a while doing a show called How I Do It or How We Do It, where myself and somebody else sits down and we talk through, here's how I would have made this show in a perfect universe, right? I think that'd be interesting because I think Eva is a great example of something where you could shift around a few things and just make it a little more, not palatable, but make it flow better, right? And Evangelion, I have no interest in watching. Absolutely none. I might, but honestly, I don't need to see some of the imagery that I've seen from that film. Some of the stuff that happens there. I get it. I understand that this was their chance to make kind of the real ending, but I'm much more interested in the rebuild films, what they do with that. Maybe someday, but just not really. End of Eva, I might watch like with friends. I don't think I'd like sit down and like spend the time to watch that, but if I'm with friends who can kind of chat and throw ideas around, that would be, that works. Have I come across a brutal anime that makes you don't really want to watch, but I'll suppose you to know what happens next? Not that often, to be honest. I'm not the kind of person. Let me think about that. But I'm not the kind of person where, or I am the kind of person where if I see something that kind of grosses me out, I'm more than willing to just stop. Brutal anime. So like I started watching Rin Daughters of Nendo-san, and got like 1 episode into that, and I was like, this is torture porn. I'm not interested. Gantz actually kind of similar. I was not pulled into Gantz. Again, nothing against Gantz. It just seemed a little. This is gonna be dismissive. It seemed kind of grimdark, adolescent grimdark. Just kind of. Grim for the sake of being grim. Same thing with King's Game. King's Game was just kind of absurd. It's like, why would you not tell anyone? Why would you not tell anyone about this? Why wouldn't you go to authorities about this? Why wouldn't you investigate it more? It just seemed like people making weird decisions about that. Lots of stuff like that. It just didn't kind of work. Funny you should ask that, Matt. This week in anime history is the anniversary of the launching of Rose of Versailles. So I think October 7th, October 9th, something like that, was when Rose of Versailles first launched. Unfortunately, I've only seen the first few episodes of Rose of Versailles before Osamu Dezaki came in, which is apparently where it really took off. So now that I know that, because I watched those first few episodes and I was like, this is fine, but I don't see the excitement. But now that I know that, I'm like, okay, I get that, and I can go back in and kind of dig into episode 15 and probably go off from there. But I can definitely tell you, Rose of Versailles was doing in shoujo what Gundam was doing in shonen. Long form storytelling, multi-dimensional characters, and some really interesting visual stuff. Really pushing forward the visuals of anime in some really impressive ways. Um, yeah, Happy Sugar Life. I watched the first episode and was like, nah. Just seems. I don't know. That tone turned me off. Um, Here's the problem for me. It's not hard to be cynical. It's not hard to be depressing. It's not hard to have a negative outlook on life because there are plenty of bad things out there. I find it more challenging and more courageous to find the positives in life. I find that more interesting because that requires a certain perspective, and I also find it more helpful, if you will. So, yeah, actually, that was one of the big things that turned me off. It's like that's really creepy. Imagine if Happy Sugar Life, the older girl was male. Imagine if that was a young man and doing that with a young girl. The internet would just explode. Um, yeah, I agree, JJ. Eurocamp is a very particular tone. It's a very particular style, and it's not it's not easy to do that in a lot of ways. There's a lot of care taken into pacing and revealing and showing things in a certain way, and not rushing, and doing all that. Um, I think Haruhi Suzumiya is another great example of a TV series where I don't think people appreciate. I mean, obviously a very popular show, but I don't think people really appreciate the time and care put into, say, The Adventures of Mikuro Asahina. All the little production details sprinkled throughout that is just really, really impressive. There's a lot of work on that, which is pretty cool. There's the guy that falls for the logo. Great. So wonderful. It's all there, folks. You want to be creeped out even further. Happy Sugar Life is your goal. Trying to think of anything other. Actually, I would say Akira is one of those movies that did gross me out, but I still wanted to see more. I didn't really like Akira when I first watched it, but I was kind of again immersed in this, these amazing visuals, and the grotesque imagery in Akira has the advantage that it is either kind of grounded in the sense that it is people's intestines coming out, or bloody gunshots, things like that, or it is fantastical. It is like the imagery in the hospital where that's happening, but also sometimes it's a vision, sometimes it's his imagination, so it kind of gives you that thing. Oh, Boogie Bop, yeah. Boogie Bop Phantom, I would say, is definitely one where that creeped me out at times, but I couldn't stop watching. Partly because, and again, one of the things that's brilliant about Boogie Pop is it gives you both, like, grotesque, like, visual horror, body horror, in some cases. Well, not really body horror, but actual grotesque things happening on screen, but also psychological horror. People doing like really nasty things to themselves and to others, and that's really interesting. And then there's Lane, yeah. Yeah, Lane punches you in the gut. And if you want Lane, then try the Lane PlayStation game. Check out some of the video clips from the Lane PlayStation game, and the TV series is tame by that standard. I checked out the first episode of Kakurio Bed and Breakfast for Spirits. That was really sweet. That was just really, really one of those shows where like I could totally, relax in bed with this. It was pretty cool. Yes, Lane. That is actually the original Lane work. Is a PlayStation game. That they made. It is the strangest video game. Well, maybe not. It is one of the strangest video games I've ever seen. Completely bizarre visual interface. You're literally diving through the wired to recollect data. Kind of with Lane as your avatar. And you're sort of collecting all these past memories and images and video clips and so forth, and trying to piece together what happened, some strange things that happened, and you get all this weird backstory and such. But yeah, like there are visuals and imagery in Lane the TV series that are throwbacks and kind of callbacks and references to the PlayStation game. It's really yeah. The game is original. In fact, So this is Omnipresence in the Wired, the Lane art book. And if you flip back to the back, there it is. So these images in the art book, they are concept art for the video game. This is Lane, that Lane avatar's costume in the video game, and that's why it's there. And that's kind of what the game looks like. There are these rings around Lane, and you're navigating through them. So yeah, that's the video game. Trying to see what else here. Yeah, actually, a lot of this other stuff. So this stuff in the next, I'm not going to show it to you because it's kind of spoilery. And it's a very different storyline. I don't know how much to say without it sounding like, without getting into spoilers for the video game. But it's not that. It's not the same as the anime series. The anime series is kind of a rethink of the whole thing. But yeah, there's also kind of multiple lanes going on, all that kind of stuff. It is remarkable stuff. I have it on emulation. Yeah. I found a I found a ROM of it. It's actually 2 discs, which tells you something. And played through as much as I can. It's not in English, although the version I have has I forget what it is. There is English in it, but I think that's from the original game. And you kind of have to bounce around and make it and make sense. Yeah, it's a long game though. It's hours and hours and hours. Part of the problem is you're going back and recovering like audio clips and video clips. So you have to sit through all of this audio and text to kind of do it. But that'd be a really cool stream. So what I might do actually just stream part of it. You know, hook it up and stream some of it. Not quite sure how I could, but we'll see. Is the game actually good? I can't tell. Because you're exploring this basically a futuristic computer, a user interface to collect video and audio clips and play through them and read text. But you're also like collecting little chips and memory bits, and the more of those you collect, the more things you unlock. So basically, as you're moving up and down, so it's this sort of column of data, and as you find things in different areas, in different parts of it have different amounts of stuff. So some levels are just empty. They're actually called layers. Layer 01. Yep. And so you may find something on layer 12, which kind of which unlocks or reveals data on layer 3. But you don't know that. You have to travel all the way back down to layer 3 to see that. But yeah, kind of more and more material is explained as you go through it. More and more backstory is explained. So it's kind of weird figuring all that out. PSXE, that makes sense. Let me just pull that up in a tab. Cool. Yeah, I put PSXE on a tab, so I'll remember it, hopefully. Yeah, that'd be a fun stream, just to kind of show you guys what the Lane PlayStation game is like. It's weird. And again, I haven't even gotten disc 2, so it might get even more bizarre and weird. But I went back and I ended up reading through a bunch of the text of the game, a bunch of the backstory, and watch, I think, pretty much all the video clips, some of which are effing disturbing. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a thing. Well, like, anime or game is better? Anime, no question. No question at all. Games are cool, but anime is my passion at this point in life, at least. I think partly because I find deeper stories in anime in general. You have to interact with games. Games have to give you things to do. And so you can explore a story and kind of reveal a story and interact with things. That's almost necessarily going to be slower than the pace of that a story can be in anime, where it can kind of just be, okay, more and more stuff is coming at you all the time. Can I run Lane PS on my cabinet setup? Possibly. I have it running on a RetroPie on my main screen. So in my other room, I have a projector projecting against the wall, and that's hooked up into a Raspberry Pi. And I have a RetroPie set up on there. And so when I was playing through it, I was playing it through it on that. But I should be able to. So, and it's funny. People talk about great stories in games, and I go and I play some of these games, and I'm like, this is there is stuff here. Like there's definitely material here in this story, but it doesn't really hold a candle to some of the the great novels, the great movies, the great anime even. And again, because it's a different medium, right? You can't do the same stuff. Sometimes you get a game that can kind of really rises out of that and can really punch you in the gut, but it's not that common. Just kind of the nature of things, and of course there's just capacity, right? There's there's so many games. How many of them are going to be really impressive? But y'all hear that? Sounds like it's time for the news. There we go. Sorry, I had a weird video focus thing. All right. Wink, boink. Let's do this thing. Welcome back to the anime and manga news for the week ending October 11th, 2019. This week brings a host of new anime series announcements. First up, PA Works announced that it is producing a new original anime titled Appare Ranman. The story takes place at the turn of the 20th century and features a Wild West car race across America. Yes, a car race. Don't see that a lot in anime. The pair of main characters, hoping to use the prize money from the race to travel back to their home country of Japan, compete using their own hand-built car powered by steam. Along the way, they must contend with other competitors, rivals, and even the great outdoors itself as they race from Los Angeles to the finish line in New York. Hint, you're going the wrong way. Meanwhile, Netflix and Science Saru have announced an upcoming anime adaptation of the classic sci-fi disaster novel Japan Sinks. Author Sakyo Komatsu published the original novel in 1973, and since then it's inspired live-action movies and series, as well as 2 manga adaptations. This new iteration will premiere on Netflix next year, and moves the setting from the original 1970s to 2020, just after the upcoming Tokyo Olympics. Auteur director Masaki Yuasa of Devilman Crybaby and others will be directing the new anime, which tells the story of a family attempting to escape disaster following a devastating earthquake in Japan. I don't think it's going to go well. Let's see here. 1 second. Sorry, there we go. It was revealed on Wednesday an anime project is in the works for the manga Dragon Goes House Hunting. The manga, which has been running in Monthly Comic Garden magazine since 2016, tells the story of a cowardly dragon who has been kicked out of his house for not living up to his family's standards of fierceness. According to Seven Seas, who serializes the manga in English, looking for a home on his own becomes quite difficult. Quote, in a fantasy world where everyone wants a piece of him, literally, the frustrations of house hunting reach a whole new level. End quote. DMM Pictures has announced an anime adaptation of Hiroaki Samura's Wave Listen to Me manga. The manga, which began in 2014, tells the story of a restaurant worker who gets unintentionally recruited into hosting a late-night radio talk show and her journey deeper into the world of radio broadcasting. Pretty interesting. The anime will premiere in April 2020. Tatsuma Minamikawa will direct the series at Sunrise, with Shoji Yonemura in charge of the script. DMM Pictures also published a promotional video along with the announcement, so if this catches your eye, go check it out on YouTube. I don't know why she's on the back of a bear either. 2 light novels have also announced anime series this week, starting with bottom tier character Tomozaki. So we have an anime adaptation in the work for this from Yuki Yaku. The eponymous Tomozaki, one of the top gamers in Japan, is highly cynical about this game of life. There are no clear rules, no parameters for winning. Overall, Let's be honest, it's a bad game. Then he meets classmate and fellow top gamer Hinami Aoi, who says that life is really a great game and offers to teach Tomozaki the proper rules. The light novel began publication in 2016, so relatively recent, and has been rated as one of the top light novels in the This Light Novel is Amazing guidebook every year since. Can we get a copy of that, by the way? A manga adaptation began in Square Enix's Gangan Joker in 2017, and Yen Press is releasing the novels in English. Shu's light novel Mao Gakuin no Futeki Gosha, about a demon king reincarnated 2,000 years into his future, is also inspiring an anime series. King Enoth, hoping for a more peaceful life, reincarnates 2,000 years into the future and finds himself going to school with his distant descendants in what used to be his own castle. The novel began publication in 2017 and spawned a manga adaptation in 2018. Square Enix will be publishing the manga in English starting in 2020. If you want to check it out, be warned, its full title continues the modern trend of too long to read in a single breath titles, but I'm going to try. The Misfit of Demon King Academy, history's strongest demon king reincarnates and goes to school with his descendants. Yeah. Mobile game fans, this last anime announcement is for you. An anime adaptation is in progress for Cygames Inc.'s incredibly popular app game Shadowverse. Released in 2016, the game features fully voiced stories, along with its strategic single and multiplayer card battles. The series will be directed by Keiichiro Kawaguchi and animated by Studio Zex. But no, we are not done with announcements. Viz Media announced at its New York Comic Con panel last Friday it'll be working with Disney on manga based on Disney properties. 2 books are in the works to be released in early 2020. Star Wars The Legends of Luke Skywalker will feature artwork by several different manga artists, including duo Akira Himakawa, who've created several Legend of Zelda manga, and Haruichi, creator of a webtoon centered around a young Princess Leia. The artists have not yet been revealed for the other book, Frozen 2, the manga. Is anyone surprised? Really? We shouldn't be. Meanwhile, the battle between the Hello Kitty and Gundam franchises continues. As part of their anniversary celebrations, 40th for Gundam, 45th for Hello Kitty, there's been an ongoing crossover project featuring the 2 iconic series facing off in rounds of limited-time merchandise sales, as well as animated short videos. And by the way, if you've not seen them, they are definitely worth watching. There is nothing quite like watching Hello Kitty leave her cutesy pastel house, fly into space, and stare down a giant mech in the middle of an intense battle. The latest update in the crossover was this week's announcement of a special fan event to be held at Sanrio's Pearl Land theme park in the spring. No less than Toru Furuya, voice actor of Mobile Suit Gundam protagonist Amuro Ray, is scheduled to attend, as well as a real Gundam and Hello Kitty herself? Okay. The event will feature talk shows outlining the state of the battle so far. Fans can earn points towards event attendance by purchasing goods, of course, with the top 500 fans from each side being invited to attend. That's a thing. Finally, if you've ever dreamed of smelling like your waifu, this one's for you. This week's iteration of anime-themed everyday goods is a collaboration between Axe Lab and the Fate Stay Night franchise. In anticipation of the upcoming Heaven's Feel movie, Axe is releasing a set of body sprays themed after the movie's main girls. Rin, Sakura, and Ilya each have a custom-themed fragrance, citrus, savon, and aqua, respectively. The collab also features a sensual image of Gilgamesh with the popular Axe fragrance Essence, if that's more your style. Those who participate get not only the body sprays. Purchasing the fragrances gives you download access to one of 11 different wallpaper images, including 5 drawn specifically for the collab. Those who spend more than 1,000 yen, about $10, will be entered into a drawing to win clear files featuring the new art. And those who exceed 1,500 yen, about $15, will be entered to win artboards signed by the characters' voice actors, as well as hanging tapestries, which I assume means wall scrolls. The collaboration runs until December 31st, so if you're looking for new personal perfume, or just something to scent your Fate Stay Night Dakimakura, go check it out. That is true. Bears are awesome. So yeah, that's a thing. Those are all things. Those are all real things. Okay, I need a minute. And I actually watched the announcement clip for that radio announcer anime with the woman on the bear, and there are several clips of her facing off against a bear. I don't know. It's all in Japanese. I can't understand it, but yep, that's actually apparently a plot point or an aspect. Maybe it's a representation of her inner struggles. I don't know. But that's imagine that. So yeah, Jay, you asked, are there anime classics out there that went under the radar? I don't know. I think if it is a classic, it can't have gone under the radar. I'm trying to think of anything. So we kind of have to, to define our terms here. I think most anime fans aren't aware of a lot of anime classics. So like the average anime fan has never heard of Rose of Versailles, for example. So there's that. But in terms of yeah, I mean I think Anne of Green Gables. I think Heidi Girl of the Alps. I think those World Masterpiece Theater series from back in the day. I think those have kind of dropped under the radar. Folks aren't really talking about those much, even today. Partly because, and this is kind of the funny thing, we all complain that anime is not just for kids, but we refuse to watch anime aimed at kids. We refuse to watch Heidi or whatever, but we'll still watch Yu-Gi-Oh. Plenty of anime fans are huge Yu-Gi-Oh fans, and it's like that's not a show aimed at adults. I don't know if you've noticed that. That is a show all about boys, young boys. Not in a creepy minute anyway. But yeah, I don't think of anything else that kind of that I think was really impressive, but folks really didn't pay much attention to. Can't really think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, I have personal things like His and Her Circumstances, which I think is wonderful, but and it was a big deal back in the day, and I think should be a classic. It's got it all, but that doesn't go anywhere. Boogie Bop Phantom, again, which I don't think is a classic at all, but should be. I don't know. Remy? Yeah, I haven't even seen Remy. And you got something, that was huge in Japan and is still classics in Japan, but not over here. There's the one about the boy and his dog. Maybe that is Remy that I'm thinking of. The Dog of Flanders, which seems to have been a big classic in Japan that didn't hit everywhere. Have I watched Osomatsu? I don't think so. Let me just Google that real quick. Mr. Osomatsu. Oh no, I watched the first episode of that and was duly entertained, but never came back to it for some reason. Oh yeah, like Cyborg 009. There's one that huge in Japan, didn't really hit over here. Megazone 23. I think Megazone 23 were classics in the day. Megazone 23 was one of those anime that everyone talked about back in the back in the 90s or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of more recent stuff too. That kind of fell by the wayside. Do you think Redline's a classic? Do you think people still are aware of Redline? I think that's a huge deal. Yeah, that's true. Akko and that's another problem is all the shoujo. Please Save My Earth, right? That's just never gonna be big over here unless there's a lot of material. Unless we got a big anime adaptation or something. That's the thing, is that I think there are a lot of classics that we just don't we didn't get in some cases. But then also I think we tried over here and just kind of faded away. Ray Earth I think is one of those where I remember even when Ray Earth was coming out over here like a DVD and so forth, people were like, "Oh wow, Ray Earth, a classic," and then it just kind of no one really talked about it much. Um, yeah, I will agree with you there. JJ Silent Voice was big, but Your Name kind of dominated. I do have a feeling that Silent Voice is going to have staying power. Obviously, Your Name will as well, but I hear people mention a Silent Voice a lot. That comes up a lot on favorite movie lists and things along those lines. So I have some hope that we'll get someone there. Yeah, that's the thing, Mike. Right. Um, there's people know things from everything. Right, and that's the other thing, Akko. I mean, you're absolutely right. And, I cannot imagine even just going back and getting caught up on all the anime of the '70s. Right, there's a lot there. Now, granted, a lot of it is cheesy kid stuff. Nothing against cheesy kid stuff, but it's a lot to plow through. But there is a lot. There's legitimately a lot. Much less the stuff of say the early '80s when the anime first started really exploding in scale. Where it's like, my gosh. What is a classic? That's a good question, Jay. Yeah, Time of Eve, Jay. Thank you, JJ. Thank you. That is Time of Eve is a stealth classic. People should watch Time of Eve. That I don't like that phrasing, but you know what I mean. Time of Eve was yeah, that's a big thing. And granted, Time of Eve is a quiet, introspective science fiction work. That's always a tough sell. Um, I think a classic is a work that stands the test of time, that is as entertaining, that is as relevant today as it was when it came out, and where people can recognize that quality. I think also a classic is something that never feels old. It can feel of its time, right? It can feel very much historical in that sense. Casablanca is a great example of a film where that is a film made at a time with a certain kinds of people and about certain kinds of things. But you can watch that. Yeah, that movie came on like Turner Classic Movies a while ago when I was in a hotel, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. It was just, it was amazing. I've not seen Hikai J, so I can't comment. But Monster does feel like those who've seen Monster are just like, this is one of the greatest anime of all time, hands down. But it does not get much screen time, sadly, which is a little odd, a little unfortunate. It seems like something that should get more attention, but you know. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Classics are universal, and it should be noted, classics are things that are widely appreciated, right? Um, Something can be high quality and interesting and so forth and so on, but if people don't recognize it, it's not really a classic. It can't be a classic unless it is a product of culture. People in the culture are like, yes, this is a big thing. Um, Although obviously you can have kind of personal classics, you can have things that you like, things that speak to you and that are classics in that sense, but don't really go anywhere. I keep bringing up Tenchi Muyo, and I think that's a great example of something that was a classic and has kind of fallen off because they keep making more Tenchi, but it doesn't have that classic spark. I can go back and watch the original Tenchi OVA and just really enjoy it and show it to friends, and they enjoy it, but it doesn't get doesn't get me rolling the way the new series do, and so people watch the new series and are like, why would I watch this thing? This is not a big franchise. Yeah, I can see Durarara. Durarara is a big deal. Um, that's an interesting point about compilation movies. There was a backlash against compilation movies when we got a lot of them. When every TV series it seemed was followed up with three compilation movies. But I think there's a place for that. So I think there's there's a certain feeling now amongst anime creators that if they do compilation movies, folks will react poorly. But it does seem like a an effective way of kind of providing people a different in. I would love to see more compilation movies show up on like Netflix and other streaming services where it's like you're probably not going to license the entire TV series, but you could license maybe compilation movies, or maybe the original creators would create compilation movies for the streaming services. So it's like, okay, maybe come on. Maybe all 26 episodes is too much, but check out this hour and a half version and I can kind of give you an idea. That'd be really cool. I think Princess Tutu is a classic. Not even underappreciated. Princess Tutu gets a lot of love in the shoujo community, as well it should. And it is absolutely universal. That is an older show that is as relevant and still it has its own visual style. It doesn't feel old. It just feels visually distinctive. Long May It Rain. Princess Tutu is an amazing piece of work. Well, in fairness, Code Geass is all over the place. It's one of the fun things about that franchise. It's kind of bonkers. Says the guy who's never really seen it, just bits and pieces. But that's what my friends all say. One of these days, I'll get back to Code Geass, maybe. Once I get through some more of this other stuff. I've been watching more Captain Future, by the way, which is just huge fun. I've kind of fallen off with Anne of Green Gables, I have to admit. It is still high quality, but it's kind of gotten slow. So, we'll see. Maybe I'll finish that out. Fortunately, it's like only 50 episodes, and I'm kind of reaching that point where I'm like, I could kind of just, and I think it's ended basically in Japan in my timeline. So now I can kind of just go back and say, okay, I'm just going to watch 5 episodes at once and just power through a whole bunch of it. Ooh, Angel's Egg. I don't know. Angel's Egg is so specific. And Angel's Egg is so weird. I think the people who seek it out are the people who want that weirdness. They want an art house film. They want something that's bizarre and visually distinct and challenging. I think if you showed the average person Angel's Egg, they would just go, why are you showing me this? It's a good idea, Jay. I may do that one of these days. Angel's Egg definitely obscure, but it's one of those weird things where I don't know if it's a classic because I don't know how many people would really appreciate it. And obviously, it's not classics don't have to be loved by everybody in the world. Shattered Angels, definitely a classic, no question. You're right, Matt. A compilation movie of a monster would be fantastic, even like a compilation trilogy, because there's enough there, obviously, to tell a lot of stories. But it's hard to say. Okay, I'm going to go back and watch this hugely long TV series, not hugely long, but long TV series when it's like that. Doesn't feel like there's going to be a lot of action in that. Oh, I totally agreed, JJ. But Angel's Egg is one of those things. It's like Robot Carnival, right? It's like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which I've not seen. It's like what was the Tom Cruise movie? The really weird one. I'm forgetting it, but some of these things where Critical Darlings and such, and people sometimes like in the case of some of those movies, folks would actually, they had decent budgets and decent audience attendances, but that's because they were novel and interesting. Yeah, I love Angel's Egg. I think it's a remarkable piece of cinema. But it's hard. It's like, it's like Fantastic Planet, if you've seen that, which is an Days of Thunder, not that one. Yeah, it's like those weird animated films from the '80s. Yeah, it can be too surreal. I talk with some of my panels about The Sensualist, which is a an anime film from the '80s about an Edo era samurai, or noble actually, who goes around sleeping with various women. And it's a sort of his the diaries of his exploits, and animated in this very kind of not just abstract style, but very symbolic style, where a lot of things are like literally him walking into a room, but then like you may see one part of a wall, but not the other part of the wall. Like just don't draw that. There are a lot of weird things, and then when they actually like fall into each other's arms, then it gets very symbolic, and lots of a drop in a pool ripples out in a pool, things along those lines, and falling leaves or whatever, which is really interesting, but it's surreal, really, in that way. And I found it really interesting to watch, but not something I would expect the average Marvel moviegoer to appreciate. Thoughts on an anime called Blackjack. I have not seen the Blackjack anime. I've read chunks of the manga. So, for those curious, I think I have a Blackjack here, right? Yeah. So, Blackjack, one of the late great Osamu Tezuka's most personal manga, actually. Stories of a well, there we go. An intense doctor named Blackjack, a surgeon who goes around and tries to help people and gets involved in various cases. And it's very intense sort of medical stuff. Tezuka himself was trained to be a doctor, but couldn't, had a tough time with that profession, and this was a really big deal. But I thought, I thought this was a really interesting thing. It's weird because it's definitely Tezuka. Tezuka tells stories that always have a strong narrative drive. There's always something happening, right, in his stories. And Blackjack deals with compromise. It deals with how life isn't fair and simple. That life sometimes deals you really rough hands, but you always have a choice in how you deal with that. And that choice is not necessarily between positive or negative. It can just be which of these outcomes is going to happen, right? And one could be equally positive or negative, and it's really interesting to kind of explore that. But it's all short stories. These are all disconnected stories. So again, like we're talking about, not the kind of thing that everyone's gonna love, but I found interesting stuff. But not enough to like read a lot of, to be honest, because it is kind of heavy. It is Tezuka dealing with some difficult aspects of being human. Night is long, walk on, girl. I want to watch that. I love his work. When I watch every anime in existence for money, I don't think it's possible. I think there is literally too much anime for one person to ever watch all of it. I think there's literally just too much media. Would I? I don't know. I don't think I would. There's a lot of crap. Sturgeon's Law. 90% of everything is crap. Because here's the thing. For every monster, you're going to watch a lot of Dando the Super Shot. You're going to watch a lot of Musashi Dendo. Lots of really, terrible anime. So I prefer to pick and choose. Less pessimistic Pet Shop of Horror. So what I like about Tezuka, one of the things I like about Tezuka is that he always had a an ultimately positive outlook. Not always, but almost always had an ultimately positive outlook on things. Not it'll all work out in the end per se, but that we're not doomed. You're not going to get screwed over for the rest of your life. Things can turn out better. Yeah, you get burned out really fast. That's true. Sazai-san. Yeah, that'd be a tough one. 7,000 episodes. Got to watch all that. I don't think I could do that. But to the deeper question, I don't know. I'll be honest. I love anime, but it's not the only thing I love. So I don't think I do that. I think it's nice to have a variety of interests. I should talk about history before I forget. Let's do that little thing. Well, hello. Welcome to the This Week in Anime History video here on Geek Archaeology, where I talk about some of the major events happening in anime history from the past week, thus the name. And today I'm talking about the premiere of Rose of Versailles back on October 10th, 1979. Rose of Versailles is not very well known today, but it came about just as anime was kind of growing out of a medium aimed entirely at children. And Rose of Versailles, well, if you've heard of Gundam, and how Gundam was this very serious, sort of much more mature anime series for the time, that's what Rose of Versailles was for girls. Right? So what Gundam was for boys, Rose of Versailles was doing for girls. It is a long-form story told at the court of Marie Antoinette. It has multi-dimensional characters who are really struggling with aspects of who they are, who they want to be. And it has some really interesting experiments visually in it. It was taken over about 15 episodes in by Osamu Dezaki, who did a lot of just really strong thinking about how to visually get across a lot of material in anime when you don't have a big animation budget. So he really kind of innovated in terms of just those visuals of anime. And Rose of Versailles is just a remarkable show for how much it kind of explored the visual language of anime. And some things worked, some things didn't, which is fine. But also interesting for the fact that it is this long-form story. Every episode is just one little piece of this very huge, epic storyline set in this very particular time in world history. And so it's just really neat seeing something that is so different and that was just really exploring things. Now, it's definitely an anime of the 70s. Animation budget is pretty low. The art style is definitely a thing. It's very sparkly at times. It's a shoujo anime, right? It kind of comes with the territory a lot of the time. But definitely an innovative and remarkable work for anime in general. So that is a thing, and that is a really remarkable thing that came out in anime. That's This Week in Anime. And yes, Utena owes a lot to Rose of Versailles. From what I understand, Magical Girl in general owes a lot to Rose of Versailles. Magical Girl existed before Rose of Versailles for quite a while, actually. And this is one of those things that I don't know because I haven't, people talk about how Rose of Versailles was kind of influential on shoujo and Magical Girl, but I've not been able to see that connective tissue, see what's going on. Let's see here. What got me into Gundam? There's a story. When Toonami was originally airing Gundam Wing, for those who don't know, they aired a somewhat edited version during 5 o'clock, and they did what they call the Midnight Run, which was an unedited version except for anything that you couldn't air on TV. So there were a couple of I think some swear words here and there that they had to edit out, but it was effectively unedited, right? A friend of mine and I had gotten into anime together, even though we lived in different cities. So we would, chat online a lot and email and so forth. And we got interested in this Gundam thing. And so we started watching, and what we would do is we would stay up until midnight and watch an episode of Gundam Wing with the computer on, and basically watch it and live chat with each other about what was going on in the episode. The problem is we started halfway through the show. So all the characters are there, all the plot, and you all know how political Gundam can get. And Gundam Wing is one of the most political Gundam series. So we're in there, and there are all of these factions that are at war with each other, and one of them falls, another one, rises, and this character dies, and that's a big tragedy, but I have no idea who those characters are. And so we're chatting on this, trying to understand what's going on. We couldn't even keep track of who the five main pilot characters were, and we were just watching it that way. And the funny thing was, Toonami would then, after that, show an episode of Dragon Ball Z, and they happened to be showing the Frieza saga at that exactly that time. So we'd watch, 25 minutes of just intense political wrangling and people screaming at each other and dying back and forth. And then we get 25 minutes of Frieza powering up an attack and then missing. And it was just so we kind of decompress with Dragon Ball Z after Gundam Wing. And watching it with him was just a really fun experiment. And we got to the ending and watched the ending. And even though we still didn't quite understand where all the plot threads were going, that ending just stuck with us. So we then stayed through the loop and started watching the opening episodes. And we're like, oh, this is why this is all happening. And that's one of the reasons I'm a Gundam fan, is that was such a unique experience. That it just really stuck with me. And also, I think Gundam Wing stuck with me because it was not a traditional anime series. Hiro Yui is not a traditional shonen character, anime character, really. It was just a wild, wild ride. And so it was really fascinating to me. So watch that, and then went from there, and then they started showing original Gundam on Toonami. I caught a little bit of that, and was like, nope, I need to watch this in sequence, starting with the first episode. Went back and watched original Gundam, and took off from there. Talking about VHS burned from Laserdisc. Wow, yeah, that's a time. There was some weird stuff floating around back in the day. Where did you get this? Oh, well, a buddy of mine taped this off TV in Japan and then shipped it over here, or carried it with him in his overcoat. Then here's a slip of paper describing all this stuff. I actually have a friend in Indianapolis who was an anime fan back in the day, early anime fandom, and he still has some of those VHS tapes, and he still has a lot of the artifacts from that period. So one of these days, hopefully, I will make it back there and recover some of those artifacts. And he said he'd be happy to let me sift through some of that stuff. But yeah, some of the early conventions, that was a time. Yeah, and Robotech is instrumental to the creation of anime fandom in America. Because we'd had a few anime series, off and on, but we'd never, other than Astro Boy and Gigantor in the early 60s, we were getting stuff I'm going to pull back on that. We were getting occasional interesting anime series. Yamato, as Star Blazers, stuff like that. But it was very sporadic. And Robotech not only gave us Macross, which was, the hot thing in Japan at the time, it also gave us two other anime series. So it really packaged together this really useful sort of view into anime at the time. We kind of got a sense of the zeitgeist. And it really helped people appreciate the variety you could get in anime. One of my favorite moments in anime comes from the middle saga of Robotech. And that is an unreserved statement. It was actually from the English dub of that. There's just some really amazing moments in Robotech, not just the Macross saga. Wow, you have the. That's really cool, JJ. It's amazing. Yeah, totally. And I mean, in fairness, Fisher, that's how the Japanese fans got started. Yamato, Gundam, Macross, Robotech, all those things that well, obviously, not Robotech back in Japan, but those shows were what founded otakudom in Japan. That's where they were, going crazy of. Watch Otaku no video. That's where all that goes. Yeah, Southern Cross is cool. In fact, when Harmony Gold went to go and make more Robotech stuff, they actually got a communication from the director of Southern Cross, who said, "Thank you for rescuing my anime series." Turns out, when Southern Cross came out in Japan, he'd been a legendary anime director, and and this was going to be his masterpiece. But it was kind of a slow burn initially, and so the viewership dropped off. And Southern Cross was considered kind of a failure in Japan. It did not get a lot of money and attention, by anime standards at the time. And then when it was brought in as part of Robotech, it really revitalized interest. And even back in Japan, there was a kind of a revival of Southern Cross. People didn't really know what Robotech was, but because there had been, word got around that Southern Cross, people were aware of this thing, and so he actually contacted Harmony Gold and said, "I would be happy to work with you because you brought what I consider to be, my masterpiece back from the grave," which was pretty amazing. Good recommendations from mecha anime that isn't Macross, Gundam, Eva, Robotech. Yes, Gun Parade March, which is variable, but is set in a very interesting setting. Gasaraki, which is also a very weird series, but is trying to do interesting things. There we go, JJ. Obviously, Razafon. Everyone's going to recommend Razafon. Big O. Again, popular recommendation. Full Metal Panic, definitely. Especially Full Metal Panic as a show that is obviously riffing off certain aspects of other mecha series, but definitely goes in its own direction with that. I love how much Full Metal Panic feels like it is set in the modern world. In a way, a lot of other mecha series, even when they're technically in the modern world, are not. But there's this, groundedness to it. Votoms. Votoms reservedly. Votoms is very grimdark. And it is a product of its time, the 70s, which could be very dark. A lot of the media of the 70s was very apocalyptic and grim. Apocalypse Now, that kind of stuff. Rurouni Kenshin? Sure, that's mecha. Yeah. I have a fairly wide view of mecha. But yeah, I think Kenshin would suffice. Yeah, I would give you that list. All right, folks. It is 10:08. I would love to go further, but you can hear my voice is starting to drag. Definitely the allergies. Thank you all so much for joining me. As always, this has been a great time. I don't think I have a way of live streaming the seasonal anime watching party, unfortunately. But if anyone knows of anything, please drop them in the Discord. Yeah. When I first pulled up the new Full Metal Panic series and watched the first episode, I was like, oh, they're executing on every plot thread. they're bringing it all back together, which is pretty cool. Um, but yeah, yeah, there's an actual way, literally transporting it across the pond. Not the pond, across the Pacific. You would tape it in Japan and then like ship it. Just ship VHS tapes. That was the way to doing it. But yeah, obviously before tapes it would be actual film. So you'd find an 8 millimeter print of something and then ship it over. But it was hard. There were very few of those, which is why I had anime conventions. By the way, that's why anime conventions got started, because folks were like, "How do I watch anime that's not on TV?" And folks were like, "Well, I do know a guy who has an 8 millimeter print of the Yamato movie, and My Youth in Arcadia." And they would all get together at one hotel, and this guy would show his copy of this, and this guy would show that copy of this. Pretty crazy. Discord has streaming capability. That's interesting. I'll have to think about that, Mike. I don't think I'm set up for streaming in the other room through Discord, though. But I might be able to. Thank you. I will see what I can do. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Let's hope the fall season has some great hits in it. And until next time. Watch some anime.